The conference room door swung shut with a click that echoed like a final judgment. Sarah Mitchell stood there, frozen for a split second, watching as her boss, Alex Hargrove, crumpled the stack of papers she'd poured her soul into over the past month. He didn't even glance at the title page, Environmental Compliance Protocol Update, before tossing it into the shredder by his desk. The machine whirred to life, a mechanical growl that devoured her meticulously researched work, line by line, citation by citation. "This is overkill, Sarah," he said, his voice laced with that condescending smirk he reserved for anyone who dared to question his shortcuts. "Legal's got this covered. Just rubber stamp their version and move on." Her knuckles whitened around the edge of the table.
But she didn't argue.
Not then. Instead, she felt a quiet fire ignite deep in her chest. The kind that doesn't blaze out but simmers, waiting. She'd been at Vanguard Logistics for 8 years, climbing from junior analyst to the unsung hero of regulatory affairs. Her policies had shielded the company from fines, lawsuits, and scandals more times than anyone cared to count. But Hargrove? He was new blood, parachuted in from some flashy consulting firm, all charisma and corner-cutting. And now, her work was confetti in a bin. As the last shreds fluttered down, Sarah made a decision. She wouldn't let this vanish. Back at her desk, under the harsh glow of fluorescent lights, she pulled up her digital backup, the one with every revision timestamped, every email chain archived. She printed a fresh copy, slid it into a plain manila folder, and locked it in her bottom drawer. Not for revenge. Not yet. Just insurance. Because in the cutthroat world of corporate logistics, where shipments crossed state lines and federal eyes watched every move, preparation wasn't optional. It was survival. The next morning, the office hummed with its usual rhythm, keyboards clacking, phones buzzing, the distant rumble of forklifts in the warehouse below. Sarah arrived early. As always, her routine a shield against the chaos. Coffee in hand, she reviewed the federal updates that had prompted her draft in the first place. The EPA had tightened rules on hazardous waste tracking under the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, Section 3004 U, specifics that demanded precise logging, audits, and retention schedules. Her version wasn't just compliant, it was a fortress, with built-in checklists to catch errors before they snowballed into violations. Hargrove's approved draft from legal? It skimmed the surface, citing outdated guidelines that could invite scrutiny. She'd pointed it out in her initial email. Polite but firm, this conflicts with the March amendments. Attached is a revised matrix for review. His response? A curt handled. No discussion. No acknowledgement. Sarah sipped her coffee, staring at the screen. She wasn't the type to storm into meetings or raise her voice in hallways. At 34, with a quiet demeanor that made people underestimate her, she'd learned that battles in boardrooms weren't won with volume. They were won with evidence. As colleagues filtered in, chatting about weekend plans, she overheard snippets from the break room. "Hargrove's shaking things up," one said. "Finally, some efficiency." Efficiency. The word twisted in her gut like a bad joke. If only they knew how his efficiency could cost them all. By midday, Hargrove called a department huddle in the open plan area. His tie loosened like he was one of the team. Great news. The new waste protocol is live. No more red tape bogging us down. Legal signed off. So we're golden. He flashed that $1 million smile. The one that charmed investors but grated on anyone who'd seen the fine print. Sarah stood at the back, arms crossed, her expression neutral.
Inside, though,
her mind raced through scenarios. What if an inspector showed up? What if a spill triggered a review? Hargrove's version left gaps wide enough to drive a semi through. As the group dispersed, he caught her eye. "Sarah."
Got a minute?
She nodded, following him to his glass-walled office. He leaned against his desk. Casual. "I appreciate your input, but we've got to streamline. Your draft was thorough, but it's not the direction we're going." Thorough. Like it was a flaw. She met his gaze steadily. "Alex, the EPA changes are mandatory. Ignoring them could lead to—" He cut her off with a wave. "Trust me, I've got experience in this. Legal wouldn't approve if it wasn't solid. Experience. From his 2 years in consulting versus her 8 in the trenches." She bit back the retort, nodded once, and left. Back at her desk, she opened the locked drawer, glancing at her safeguarded folder. It felt heavier now, a silent ally in a brewing storm. Weeks blurred into a tense normalcy. Shipments came and went, reports piled up, and Hargrove's policies rolled out like unchecked freight trains. Sarah kept her head down, handling her daily tasks, vendor audits, safety trainings, but always with an eye on the horizon. She documented everything: emails, meeting notes, even casual conversations in the hallway. Old habits from her early days, when a small oversight had nearly cost the company a permit. One afternoon, as rain pattered against the windows, her phone buzzed with an internal alert. A minor waste incident at the Dallas warehouse. Nothing major, but enough to flag the system. She pulled up the logs, cross-referencing with Hargrove's protocol. Sure enough, the retention schedule was off by months. If audited, it could escalate. She drafted a memo, attached evidence, and sent it up the chain. Potential compliance gap identified. Hargrove's reply came swift. Noted. No action needed. Her jaw tightened. Noted. Like a post-it discarded. That night, driving home through the Seattle drizzle, Sarah replayed the shredder's whine in her mind. It wasn't just paper he destroyed. It was trust. Expertise. The invisible glue holding the company together. At home, in her small apartment overlooking the Sound, she poured a glass of wine and stared at her laptop. The backup folder glowed on the screen. She added today's memo to it. Timestamped. Preparation, she reminded herself, is the quietest form of power. The tension built slowly, like pressure in a sealed container. Colleagues started noticing glitches, delayed approvals, murmured concerns from vendors. Hargrove dismissed them in meetings, pivoting to metrics and growth charts. "We're agile now," he'd say, as if words could ward off regulators. Sarah watched, waited. Then, on a crisp Friday morning, the elevator dinged, and 2 figures stepped out. Suits, badges,
Clipboards.
EPA inspectors. Unannounced. The office froze mid-stride. Hargrove's assistant buzzed him frantically. Sarah's heart steadied. She'd seen this coming. As the inspectors were ushered into the conference room, Hargrove strode in, all confidence. "Gentlemen, welcome. How can we assist?" The lead inspector, a no-nonsense man with wire-rimmed glasses, got straight to it. "We're here for a spot check on your waste protocols. Recent amendments require updated tracking." Hargrove nodded, pulling up his version on the projector. Sarah, called in as support, sat quietly. The inspectors scanned the document, brows furrowing. "This doesn't align with Section 3004 U. Retention's outdated." Hargrove blinked. "Legal approved it." The inspector didn't blink back. "Show us the version history." That's when Sarah spoke, calm as still water. "I have the original draft here." She slid her folder across the table. The room shifted, the air thick with unspoken questions. The inspector's eyes narrowed as they flipped through Sarah's folder, the pages whispering secrets that Hargrove had tried to bury. The lead one paused on the first annotation, a highlighted clause tying directly to the EPA's March update. This addresses the discrepancies, he muttered to his partner, who nodded, jotting notes. Hargrove shifted in his seat, his usual polish cracking like cheap veneer. Sarah's draft was preliminary, he interjected, voice a touch too high. We went with legal's streamlined version for efficiency. The inspectors exchanged a glance, the kind that spoke volumes without words. Streamlined. In regulatory speak, that often meant stripped bare. Sarah sat still, her hands folded in her lap, letting the documents do the talking.
Inside, though,
a quiet satisfaction bloomed, not glee, but vindication. The slow release of that pent-up fire. The partner inspector pulled out a tablet, cross-referencing her matrix with federal guidelines. Your version here includes the mandatory audit triggers. Why wasn't this implemented? Hargrove cleared his throat. Internal decision. We prioritized operations. The lead shook his head slightly. Operations don't excuse non-compliance. He turned to Sarah. You authored this? She nodded. Yes. Based on the full amendments. No elaboration. No accusation. Just facts. As the meeting stretched into the afternoon, the inspectors dissected both versions side by side. Hargrove's draft bled red ink, circled omissions, underlined errors. Sarah's stood pristine, a blueprint of foresight. Colleagues peeked through the glass walls, whispers rippling like waves. By hour 2, Hargrove's phone buzzed incessantly. Legal. No doubt. Scrambling. He excused himself briefly, returning paler. The inspectors wrapped up their initial review, packing notes. We'll need full records by Monday. This could lead to citations. Hargrove nodded vigorously. Of course. Sarah.
Can you compile that?
She met his eyes evenly. Already have. Back at her desk, she emailed the archived chains, every submission, every ignored flag. The office emptied early that day. A Friday hush descending. Sarah stayed late, the rain now a torrent outside. She reviewed the incident logs again, adding notes. This wasn't over. Audits like this could drag. Fines looming like storm clouds. Driving home, she felt the weight lift slightly. Not triumph yet, but momentum. At her apartment, she cooked a simple dinner, the ritual grounding her. Her phone pinged, a text from a colleague. What happened in there? She replied briefly. Just the facts. No gossip. No drama. Let the truth unfold on its own. Monday dawned, with urgency. Emails flew, legal demanding backups. HR scheduling reviews. Hargrove called Sarah into his office first thing. We need to align on this, he said.
Door closed.
Align. Code for cover. The inspectors liked your draft. Why didn't you push harder? She arched a brow. I submitted it. With comparisons. He leaned forward. Earnest now. Help me fix this. Fix his mess. She paused. The shredder's echo faint in her memory. I'll provide the documents. No more. No less. She left, compiling a shared drive with everything, timestamps, read receipts proving he'd seen her warnings. Legal dove in. Their thanks strained over calls. By midday, the inspectors returned digitally, requesting clarifications. Sarah handled them, her voice steady on the conference line. The Matrix ensures quarterly reviews. Per 3004 U. They approved, noting her draft as the benchmark. Hargrove hovered, but his input faltered. Whispers grew. Sarah saved us. She ignored them, focusing on work. That evening, alone with her thoughts, she reflected on the undercurrents, how gender played silent roles, how quiet competence was often dismissed. But today, It spoke louder. The preliminary report arrived midweek. A PDF attachment that hit inboxes like a thunderclap. Nonconformance noted in waste protocol. Potential penalties, up to $1.5 million. The office erupted in murmurs. Hargrove called an all-hands, pacing like a caged animal. This is a hiccup. We'll address it. But eyes darted to Sarah. She sat quietly, knowing the report cited her unheeded advisement. Legal followed up, pulling her into strategy sessions. Your version mitigates everything, one lawyer admitted. We should have looped you in sooner. Should've. The word hung heavy. She nodded, contributing fixes, without fanfare. Hargrove's star dimmed. Meetings excluded him. Blame shifting upstream. By Thursday, board whispers reached her, process overhaul incoming. Sarah documented it all. Her folder now a digital vault. Driving home through traffic, she felt the buildup cresting. Not explosion yet, but inevitable. At home, she journaled briefly. Preparation outlasts pride. The next day, the inspector scheduled a follow-up. Hargrove prepped frantically, but Sarah was ready. Her draft now the de facto standard. Tension coiled tighter as the week closed. Colleagues approached her cautiously. You called it, one said. She smiled faintly. Just doing my job. But inside, emotions swirled, frustration at the waist, relief at the reckoning. Friday's follow-up was clinical. Inspectors reviewed revisions based on her work. This aligns now, they confirmed. Hargrove exhaled visibly, but the damage lingered. Post-meeting, he cornered her. You could have warned me more. She met his gaze. I did. The words landed like quiet thunder. He walked away, defeated. Sarah returned to her desk, the office buzzing with subdued energy. The storm had passed, but echoes remained. That night, rain lashing her windows, she pondered the human cost, arrogance's toll, the value of unseen labor. The company would pay fines, but smaller now, thanks to her. Yet no promotion, no applause, just quiet restoration. As she drifted to sleep, the shredder's whine faded, replaced by resolve. Months after the audit's dust settled, the office carried a subtle scar, a wariness in meetings, a newfound respect for details. Sarah's role expanded quietly. Legal looped her in early. Colleagues sought her input. Hargrove, though, became a ghost, fewer smiles, more closed doors. The fine came down, $1.2 million. A gut punch to budgets. Project stalled. Bonuses froze. Whispers blamed leadership oversight. Sarah watched it unfold. Her emotions a mix. Satisfaction tempered by empathy for the fallout. One afternoon, as sunlight slanted through blinds, HR called her in. We're reviewing the incident. Your records were key. She nodded, providing statements without embellishment. I followed protocol. They thanked her, eyes appreciative. Back at work, she revised another policy, emissions this time, infusing it with safeguards. Hargrove's misstep had taught her, build in redundancies. That evening, at a quiet dinner with friends, she shared snippets. Work drama, she said lightly. But inside, the mouth-thwan lingered, how one man's ego nearly sank the ship. The board's inquiry ramped up, pulling emails, logs. Sarah's vault proved invaluable. Red receipts damned Hargrove's denials. He testified behind closed doors, emerging strained. By week's end, rumors swirled, resignation imminent. Sarah focused on tasks, but felt the emotional undercurrent, betrayal's sting, resilience's glow. Colleagues confided, you were right all along. She shrugged. Team effort. But alone, driving through autumn leaves, She acknowledged the win, her voice, once shredded, now echoed. Home that night, she reviewed old notes. The shredder incident a pivot point. It wasn't just policy, it was identity. Worth. The next day, Hargrove's office emptied. No farewell. Just vacancy. An email announced, transition in leadership. Relief washed over the floor. Sarah exhaled, the tension releasing like a held breath. With Hargrove gone, interim leads deferred to Sarah. Run point on compliance, they said. She dove in, restructuring protocols with collaborative flair. Meetings flowed. Ideas welcomed. Emotions surged, pride in her craft. Subtle humor in ironies. One session, a junior quipped about shredder-proof drafts. Laughter eased the air. Sarah smiled. The build-up to this moment sweet. Yet, she pondered the human side. Hargrove's fall. A cautionary tale. That evening, walking her neighborhood, leaves crunching, she felt balance restore. Work emails praised her contributions. Quiet nods in halls. No fanfare, but affirmation. As winter approached, she drafted a company-wide training, compliance as culture. It wove in lessons learned, without naming names. A new director arrived, Elena Vasquez. Sharp. Inclusive. She met Sarah first. Heard about your work. Let's collaborate. The shift was palpable. Ideas flowed, without dismissal. Sarah's confidence bloomed, her storytelling in reports engaging. Emotions deepened. Gratitude for growth. Reflection on past lights. One rainy afternoon, auditors returned for routine checks. Sarah led, her policies shining. Impressive, they noted. Colleagues beamed. She felt the explosion of validation. Quiet but profound. Home. Wine in hand. She toasted silently. To the unsung. The prepared. The year turned. Policies solidified. Sarah mentored juniors. Sharing wisdom. Document everything. Laughter mixed with lessons. Humanizing the corporate grind. Yet, the core conflict lingered in memory, underestimation's cost. In quiet moments, she questioned, what if she'd spoken louder? But no, her way worked. As spring bloomed, a promotion email arrived, senior compliance lead. Not dramatic, but earned. She accepted. The journey's arc complete, leaving a lingering ethical query. In corporate battles, is quiet strength enough? The promotion settled like a well-deserved dawn, illuminating paths Sarah hadn't fully seen before. Her new office, modest but her own, overlooked the warehouse bustle, a reminder of the ground-level impacts her work touched. Morning started with team huddles, where she encouraged voices often silenced, drawing from her own shadowed past. Emotions layered in, empowerment's warmth, the subtle humor in turning tables. One day, a policy debate arose. A hotshot suggested shortcuts. Sarah paused, echoing Hargrove's ghost. Let's weigh the risks, she said gently. They did, opting for thoroughness. Laughter followed. Better safe than shredded. The team bonded over it. Conflicts resolving in dialogue. Yet, deeper. Sarah grappled with the mouth wan. Success born from pain. The ethical tightrope of corporate loyalty. Audits became routine triumphs. Her frameworks praised. Colleagues shared stories. You changed how we operate. She nodded humbly. But inside, pride swelled. Evenings brought reflection, journaling the journey's twists. Friends noticed her glow. Work treating you well? She smiled. Finally. But the core lingered. Hargrove's fall. A human cost. Rumors said he'd bounce to another firm. Lessons unlearned. Sarah pondered. Does change stick? Or cycle? A major project loomed, supply chain overhaul under new green regs. Sarah led, collaborating cross-department. Tensions flared, budgets versus compliance, but she navigated with empathy. Humor defusing debates. Remember the shredder? Became a mantra. Lightning loads. Emotions peaked in late nights. Camaraderie building. Success came. Protocols approved. Fines averted. Board kudos followed. Her name highlighted. Quiet explosion. Recognition without fanfare. Personal life intertwined. A date with a colleague turned serious. Sharing vulnerabilities. I was underestimated, she confided. He understood. Their bond deepening. Work-home balance improved. The story's arc enriching both. Yet, ethical questions persisted, in a system rewarding shortcuts. How to foster integrity. As summer heated, a conference invite arrived, speak on compliance ethics. Sarah prepared. Her narrative weaving drama.
Psychology.
Love for the craft. On stage. Voice steady. She shared anonymized tales. Audience rapt. Applause followed. But the true win, inspiring others. Back home. She reflected. From shredded drafts to spotlight, the journey's due and strength in silence. Power in preparation. The conference's echo faded, but its impact lingered. Invitations trickling in for consultations. Sarah balanced them with vanguard duties. Her role now pivotal. Emotions evolved, fulfillment's depth. The humorous irony of her rise. Team outings celebrated wins. Laughter over past follies. Yet, a new conflict brewed, corporate expansion tempting old shortcuts. Sarah flagged it early. Her voice now heard. We've learned, leadership assured. She nodded, but archived diligently. The lesson etched. Personal milestones marked time, a relationship proposal. Accepted amid joy. Work mirrored, policies influencing industry standards. A peer review praised her as the quiet force. Inside, she felt the bung no, validations crescendo. But Duam questioned, what if those still underestimated? A crisis tested. A vendor spill. Triggering review. Sarah's protocols contained it. Minimizing damage. Auditors commended. Forward thinking. Relief washed over. But reflection followed. Human mouth won in high-stakes worlds. Colleagues toasted her. She deflected. Team effort. As fall returned, Sarah mentored a young analyst. Mirroring her start. Prepare.
Persist, she advised.
The cycle turned positive. Her story's message clear. Quiet resilience reshapes realities. In the end, gazing at the sound from her window, Sarah pondered the path, from shredder's bite to ethical legacy. What remains when egos clash? The work, the truth, the lingering query, in a world of noise. Does silence truly conquer?